We're all keeping our eyes peeled on the news at the moment. We're watching this coronavirus spread around the globe rapidly. And we're all very frightened, I think. I went to the supermarket this morning. A lot of people seemed in limbo. You know, they were focused on what was happening in places like Italy and Iran. And it is very frightening. I mean, if you go on Twitter, you get the sort of unmediated view of the events in Iran. You know, there's pictures of people falling dead in the streets, hospitals where they're piling up the bodies, the corpses, they're digging mass graves, and the figures that are coming out, the government figures, you cannot believe them. They're saying there's a few hundred deaths, but the people in the medical profession say there's hundreds dying every day, that the death toll now is over 3,000 in Iran. And we're seeing that the leaders of the Iranian regime, the mullahs, they have actually got the virus, and they've been spreading it around the Middle East as they've gone to places like Lebanon and Iraq to meet up with their comrades or their, you know, fellow travellers. They're spreading this virus around the Middle East. So if the leaders of the regime have got the virus, it must be endemic throughout the society. And that's how rapidly this coronavirus can spread and how poignant it is. It could be tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of deaths in Iran. And it's the big cities where it's being concentrated, in Tehran, and we're going to see it. And we see, jump over to Italy, you see in Milano, that's the epicenter of the outbreak. And the streets of Iran, like the streets of Italy, are deserted. Everyone's being put into quarantine. People don't want to communicate. People are frightened to interact. But people have got to go get around about their daily business. They've got to gather food. They've got to earn an income. In a place like Iran, which is very poor, there's no welfare state to fall back on or government support. I mean, you know, the Italians can, to a degree, fall back on that, have a reliable government. But the scale of this outbreak now, this coronavirus outbreak, is really overwhelming the state institutions. It's of course it will be temporary, it will pass, but it's going to leave a lot of damage, and it's shaking people, it's shaking nations, and it's striking that it's bringing people together. Because at the end of the day, it's not the state that's going to protect you. It's not even the health system. It's your family, it's your neighbourhood, it's your community, whether they're going to be there for you to supply you with the basic needs of life, and the basic support, the basic nursing comes first of all from the family. And all the institutions which have been undermined by liberalism or cultural Marxism in the West, like the family, like the community, like ethnic identity, all these things are really important when you're faced with a crisis. And it reawakens people to the absolute essence of our life, that we're dependent upon each other, and it's only those we perceive that we share our destiny with, who are our fellows in this world, who we can rely on for mutual help. They're the people who are our bedrock. You know, family first, community, nation. Is this sort of waffle, United Nations waffle of one worldism, that, you know, all of humanity are in this together? People don't think like that. People think in their groups. This togetherness has to be real. It has to be based on mutuality. We give each other mutual support. We care for each other. We have to, because we're going to depend on each other. Now, we live in a fractured society now. We've got this Islamic community. Trevor Phillips has described the Islamic community as a nation within a nation. They are interested in the Ummah, the Islamic Ummah, supporting each other, developing their strength and their presence in our society. Now, for pointing out this obvious truth, the way Islam operates, the way the Muslims organise in our society, the way they live, they congregate around their mosque, the way they form these organisations, for pointing out the obvious sociological truths here, Trevor Phillips has been expelled. Well, not expelled, but he's been suspended from the Labour Party pending expulsion. I mean, he's being investigated. And he's been accused of this horrendous crime of Islamophobia, which is being rational and sensible and critical about Islam. That's not allowed. In the Quran, that's called slander. You cannot give a critical appraisal of Islam. You simply have to bow down to it and defer to it. But that's not in our nature in the West. Trevor Phillips has come through Western civilization. He's a black man. So, this is the problem with intersectionality. Because he's a black man, he's supposed to bat with their side. Their side is all the sort of non-whites, non-Christian people are supposed to be in this together, non-males. We're the enemy. And they've all got to be united against us. But he has actually exposed some of the fissures, some of the divisions, some of the cracks in that sort of rainbow coalition which is targeted against white civilization. And it's really seminal that the Labour Party have focused on this issue at the time of the coronavirus outbreak, when people are dying, big sporting events are being cancelled, when quarantine is around the corner, when people are panic buying. When we're faced with a real crisis in society, which we're looking for a response and a leading role for our politicians in this, Labour are still involved in their cranky issues about political correctness. Isn't this symptomatic of the Labour Party, which has lost the plot? The Labour Party now is totally insane. It's focused entirely on identity politics, left-wing identitarianism. And the people, we ordinary people, are faced with practical issues every day of providing for our families, of earning a wage, of trying to pay the rent, trying to build a life. We're being told that we're either racist or sexist or Islamophobic or transphobic or xenophobic, or there's this wrong with us or that. They said, this is a parallel universe. None of this has any reality. We're just living life. We have our identity. We're British. That's our given identity. That's what's on our passport. We belong to the British nation. We have a long history, a long shared history. We have our heroes from the past. Not just Nelson and Wellington and Cromwell and Alfred the Great and King Arthur, but all the lads who picked up their guns and fought in the First World War, All the nurses that care for the sick people. These are the heroes of our nation. And that's what we belong to. That's our identity. We don't want that identity undermined and challenged and rubbished by the Labour Party, but that's all the Labour Party wants to do. But we're going to need this identity now in the time of crisis. We've got to come together as a nation and as a community and support each other. And there's no role anymore for the Labour Party. It's now just an irritant in this society. It's like a sort of almost a manic, mad friend, which we just have to push to the margin of society. We have no use for it anymore. And there doesn't seem to be any hope in the Labour Party, because the truth speakers, the Trevor Phillips, the people who are raising the serious issues about the future, they're stigmatised, demonised and cast out. The Labour Party is a cult now. It's a cult. And if you challenge their leading creed, which is not just multiculturalism, which is Islam now, it's the Islamic Labour Party. The Labour Party is dependent on the Muslim vote. If you challenge the Islamic creed and this sort of anti-Westernism and anti-Christian nature of the Labour Party, they just push you aside. And they've got this whole gaggle of feminists, of sort of screaming banshees, who will attack anybody who challenges what they view as being ideologically pure. And so when Trevor Phillips was condemned by the Labour Party and put, sort of suspended, the likes of Sarah Sultana and Saida Warzi, the former chairwoman of the Tory party, I'll have to come on to that as well. And the usual gaggle, this Ash Sakar and so on, and even the leader, Jenny Smart, who had this love child with Len Mikulski, they've all attacked Trevor Phillips and said he's an Islamophobe, as if that means anything. It means nothing. It means someone who's prepared to give an objective view of Islam. That's all it means. But to the Labour Party have to cry now. And that's what they're interested in at this moment of crisis in our nation and internationally. Just shows you how crazy the Labour Party is. But I'm also worried about the Tory party, because not only does Saida Warsi, not only is she attacking Trevor Phillips, but the Tories just expelled a whole bunch of people for Islamophobia. They're buying into this nonsense as well. Somehow, we're no longer allowed to have a critical appraisal of Islam. Some people have made very sanguine, very sensible comments about Islam in their social media accounts. One guy said, it's a danger to us. They're a takeover movement. Of course they're a takeover movement. Everybody knows that. They've got their own agenda. Of course they have. They're wheeling their way into our institutions. They're acquiring power. David Cameron said he'd love them to acquire more power, and actually our Prime Minister should be a Tory, should be a Muslim. What is the Conservative Party up to? Why are they buying into this Islamic agenda? It's crazy. It's all totally crazy. We want our politicians to speak up for the traditional, ordinary, decent British families that have fought for this nation and contributed to this nation for century after century. Our roots go back thousands of years in this society. It's our country. It's our government. And they need to represent us and stop pandering to minorities. And we want to see at this time of crisis that the government brings the British people together to overcome. And that we no longer are pushing a multicultural Islamic agenda, but we're pushing now a pro-British agenda. This is the challenge to Boris Johnson. Stop pandering to the Marxists, stop pandering to the globalists, and stand up for the British people at this time, because we need your leadership, and we need the right policies to give our people a future and this nation a future. We're looking to America. We're looking at what Mike Pence is doing in America, the way he's rallying the American people. He said he wants the whole of America engaged in this project to overcome the coronavirus. That's what we need in Britain. We need a Churchill figure, someone to unite us and give us a vision of the future. Stop condemning patriots. Stop abusing truth speakers. Stop sticking negative labels on people because they're white or Christian or male, and start standing up for the British again. It's about time. Thank you.